Thank you. Hello, everyone. This is, I want to thank you all for being here. I'm just going to put this on for the people overseas so they can hopefully hear it on the video. I want to thank you for being here. It means the world to us that you're sitting in a warm hall in summer. I really want this to be a celebration of Dad, and it's not a solemn occasion. I'm just getting my first chance to glance around the room and seeing faces. And Dad would be happy, but I'm sure he'd be saying, "What's the fuss about?" So today we get to write the final chapter of Dad's book. Just because the book is ending doesn't mean that it wasn't worthwhile reading it. And I'd like to share some of my memories of Dad and his life. It won't be everything, and it is from my point of view, so I'm sure Pete's got some other stories, but he's not up here, so. It'll give you a bit of a glimpse into his life. So Dad was born on June 17th, 1939 in Luton in England to Charles and Marjorie Gutteridge. He's a brother to his younger sister Una. Dad focused on studying agriculture. He was a Queen's Scout, and after graduating from the University of Nottingham with a Bachelor of Science, he got a job as a pig manager for the Gin family in England. Eventually that farm was sold, and it was a turning point in Dad's life, where he and some of his mates decided to drive from England to Australia in the late 1960s, which is almost unimaginable today. The drive took them through the Middle East and India. I remember Dad telling me once that in India he had his palm read, and he was told that he would live to his early 90s. He's not too far off the age of 85, that's a pretty good innings. He'd already applied for a job at the Department of Agriculture in Melbourne with Dr. Watson, and he was successful in getting that job. I'd like to acknowledge those that are here today with whom were his work colleagues from that time. I really appreciate you guys coming up. That's awesome. My dad's secretary is here today, and I think he'd be chuffed. He really would. Living in Armidale in 1970, Dad met Mum at the South Yarra Arms at Easter. And Mum, having grown up a farm in England, was also animal mad and was keen to see some animals. So Dad, being the smooth operator that he was, took her to see some pigs. Magic, you know. They were married in 1972. Peter was born in 1974, and not content with just one child, I was born in January 76. I don't remember a lot about Vermont, which is where Mum and Dad live. My memories really start when we moved to Bears Lagoon. Now, if you don't know where Bears Lagoon is, you're in good company because not many other people do. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's quite the distance from Vermont, but I'm sure it was heaven to both my parents, who were destined to live on a farm and work with animals. We moved there basically to build a bacon factory for Castle Bacon, which is now known as KR Castlemaine. At Bears Lagoon, I have memories that include Dad teaching me how to ride a bike and to kick a footy outside. Yeah. I can remember telling him, "Please don't let go," and he was already let go like 30 minutes before, or 30 seconds before. He found that hilarious. I also remember that Dad used to cut our hair outside on the lawn at Bears Lagoon. There was one time in the middle of having my hair cut, the phone rang or something, and Dad had to go inside. And leaving the scissors behind, I remember thinking, how hard can it be? So I grabbed the scissors and took a chunk of my hair off the top of my head. And then he came back and, of course, was not too pleased with the efforts. And I don't remember him cutting our hair anymore after that. That's the kind of guy he was. Why would you spend money on something you can do yourself? That's Dad. And around about 1982, we left Bears Lagoon and moved to Gutteridge. I see the woodies over there, which is near Kyabram. Again, we moved because of pigs. Our whole life can be summed up that we moved because of pigs. My memory is that Dad was the manager of the first piggery in Gary, and I don't remember that being the greatest of times at that place. We lived, not because of anything we did, but the conditions. We lived at the farm in White Road, and before long we purchased land in Gillies Road, where Mum and Dad decided to relocate a house from Melbourne. Which is interesting because you picture splitting a weatherboard house into three, putting it onto trucks and shipping it up to the middle of the country to then be reassembled on stumps in a place that had no power. He loved a challenge. He relished in working hard. I recognise now that he had what you call a Puritan work ethic, where hard work was a signifier of one's salvation. You haven't earned it until you've bled for it. It's something that's been passed on to both Pete and myself. It's not necessarily the best trait to have, but we have it. For me, growing up, Dad was always gone to the piggery by the time I was up. We'd get home from school and Dad would arrive, usually about 10 minutes later, around about 4 o'clock. He'd have a coffee with Mum and he'd be gone again. He'd go out to the farm that we lived on. So he worked on a farm and we lived on a farm, so he was always working, which I'm sure that was his natural disposition. The animals always came first. It didn't matter what day that was, even on Christmas Day. He'd come home, have dinner, and probably collapse in front of the TV. This is back in the day when most homes only had one TV, so he had to watch what he wanted to watch. So for obvious reasons, he would love watching British comedy. So thanks to Dad, I was raised on Porridge, The Two Ronnies, and Open All Hours. Ronnie Barker was a staple of my childhood. Whilst all the other kids got to watch a country practice, the A-Team, and Knight Rider, we had to watch the uncool shows like Are You Being Served and Rompold the Bailey. I have fond memories of Dad at Gillies Road. I remember looking for and finding Halley's Comet in 1986 with him outside the back door in the wee hours of the morning. I remember him helping me with my homework, helping me to draw a 7-point star for the Australian flag. Carting hay, riding motorbikes, driving the tractor and shooting rifles at targets are all good memories I have from Gillies Road. As proof, Dad always taught me to carry a handkerchief. I learned this lesson one day because fitting the hay to the animals in Gillies Road, I was stabbing hay bales for fun with his penknife, and the obvious outcome was the knife somehow collapsed and sliced my hand. Dad, being the Queen Scout, always carried 2 hankies, and one for his nose and the other for such occasions where you need to wrap a wound. And I've tried my best to get my kids to have a hanky, and you can see that they're all just going, no. Perhaps you need to slice your hand, guys. That's the magic ingredient that's missing. So I kind of think about him every time. It's funny because it's the thing you always check when you leave the house: wallet, keys, hanky. And that's the legacy of Dad that I've never forgotten. Looking back, nothing much fazed Dad, to be honest. I remember him being in a paddock on the farm. I could be making up stories, but I'm sure there was a point of time where there was a snake between his legs one time, and he just picked it up with his hands and just flicked it to snap its neck. That's the story I remember actually happening. Whilst at Gillies Road, Dad got another job as a manager at another piggery. Pig farm was unlike all the others. It was part of a 1,000-acre farm. And it wasn't long before Dad proved his worth to the farm's owner, and we made the move to Abercorn, which is what the name of the farm was. Anyway, he was promoted to farm manager. Looking back, it must have been a dream come true. I can tell you it was heaven for us kids, as we had free range to ride motorbikes, drive routes, utes, work with tractors and utilise the farm workshop, which Pete loved. I remember Dad being happy, and I think he literally worked every day. His work ethic served him well. By all accounts, by the time we had good times at Abercorn. I remember it feeling like the farm was ours, but at the end of the day, it wasn't. Eventually, the farm was sold, and the time came for Mum and Dad to move on in 1996, and Bendigo is where they landed. I really felt for Dad at the time. I remember it well because he was trying to apply for jobs at the age of 57, and he wasn't getting anywhere. Eventually, he got a job at the Huntley Piggery, but this time working as a supply manager, looking after the storeroom where uniforms were kept and other such things for the workforce there. He was there for about a decade, from what I can tell, and retired at the age of 67. But like many who retire, he was bored shitless and driving mum crazy around the house. So thankfully for everyone involved, he was able to get a job at Keen's Eggs. Gary's here, he was the owner. Gary has recalled to me several times how hard of a worker Dad was. And he never let age stop him from putting in as much effort as he could. Dad had a number of ailments, but his sight was the first big thing to go. Eventually, he had to stop driving, and one of his mates, Neville, who's here as well, came to pick him up every day, and he worked as hard as he ever had. I'd like to acknowledge that Neville, he's become quite a good friend of the family, and there's been people that have come to every function that we've had as a family, and Neville's one of them, which has been great. Eventually, Dad finished at Keen's when he literally couldn't see anymore. But it wouldn't have mattered much anyway, as we're about to come into the COVID years. Once we're out of lockdown, Dad went to England with Jerry, who's here as well, in January 2022. When he got back, Mum knew that there was something that was not quite right about Dad. He went in for an MRI in March, and in April of 2022, he was diagnosed with dementia. Dementia is also known as the long goodbye. We knew there wasn't a cure, and we knew it was going to get worse as time went on. He was still able to move around the farm. He loved walking his dog and doing a whole bunch of other things around the paddocks. He'd come to family functions. He wouldn't necessarily say much, but I knew he was there. But it was also evident that every time I saw him, there was less of the man that I knew. On the 17th of May, Dad was rushed into surgery to remove some gallstones on a Friday. Mum and I were there in the ER when it became very real very quickly. Mum got a phone call at about 4:30 in the morning, Saturday morning after the Friday night surgery, that the surgery had been successful, that Dad was going to have to be in the ICU for a couple of days fighting an infection. And for us, this is where we lost Dad. Anesthesia to a patient with dementia is like pouring gasoline on a fire, petrol on a fire. Once Dad woke up, he was further along. The nature of his condition meant that he had to go in for a second round of surgery and a second round of anaesthetic, and would be the equivalent of a bomb going off in his head. So Mum became the full-time carer for Dad, and it was astonishing to see how quickly he went downhill from that point. But I've written here, please don't be sad. As far as dementia goes, we got off pretty lightly. I can tell you that Dad's final days were filled with the family at home. By chance, Mum's nephew Scott and his partner Danny had flown in from New Zealand, and they'd organised this trip a couple of months ago, and we'd all forgotten about it for obvious reasons. But on one side of the room, we had Dad literally on his dying bed, on a hospital bed. And on the other side of the room, we had Charlie. And Charlie is Scott's daughter, who's a 6-month-old baby. And she was beautiful. And she was smiling and laughing. And it was the most adoring. She was sitting, I got a photo of Charlie sitting on Audrey's knee. And it was an apt reminder of the circle of life and the great relief of tension that was surrounding us. And I'm sure Dad felt that. It really was a peaceful transition, if you want to call it that. It was. If you look at the movies and see horrible outcomes, this was not one of them. It was really peaceful. Dad went peacefully on the November 21st at about 10 o'clock, just after 10 o'clock. I saw him later that night after he'd passed, and he looked like he was asleep. He was very peaceful, and of all the ways to go, I think that's the best. I want to say a special thanks to Debbie, who was a rock. She really was. You were fantastic. We'll never forget it. Because there were certain things that Pete and I just went, that's not our jam. And you did an amazing job and looked after him beautifully. So I thank you for that. So Dad leaves behind a wife, 2 children, sisters-in-law. No, that's not right. Daughter-in-law. And 5 grandkids. And that's pretty much it. There's a whole bunch of other stuff we could tell you, but it's hot and we need to keep it short. So to quote the two Ronnies, it's good night from me and it's good night from him.
Now I'd like to invite granddaughter Audrey Gutteridge. Can't even see the screen. Can't see it.
That's okay. Let me read it. I can't see the screen either. So it says, let me go. When I come to the end of the road and the sun has set for me, I want no rights in the gloom-filled room. Who cry for a soul set free? Oh, sorry, why cry for a soul set free? Miss me a little, but not for long, and not with the head bowed low. Remember the love that once we shared. Miss me, but let me go. So this is a journey that we all must take, and each must go alone. It's all part of the master plan, a step to the road to home. When you are lonely and sick at heart, go to the friends we know. Laugh at all the things we used to do. Miss me, but let me go. Good.
Saying goodbye to a granddad is never easy. It's now time for a moment of reflection. I'm going to invite the family to come up during the music that they've chosen to lead us through the rosemary in remembrance of John. If at this time you feel moved to pray, please feel free to do so. And I'd like to invite you all just to lead us through the rosemary for John if you feel moved.
Right? Yeah. Right.
I see trees of rain, red roses too. I see them bloom early in June, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, the bright blessed day, dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, spreading in the sky, also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking, saying how they say, I'm done. I can make this right. I watch them grow. They're like much more than I ever knew. And I think to myself, I think to myself, what a wonderful.
Well, thank you, Lily. It's a beautiful song. There will be a tree planted at the farm in memory of John. It's one of those things that will just endure. Now, is Robert from Sydney here? I'd like to invite Robert to come up and say a few words. And if anyone else has anything that they think hasn't yet been said, now would be a good time to gather your thoughts. Robert, would you like to come up?
Thank you for the opportunity. We're all of an age where you don't so much come up as you leave up. I wonder how often you can clearly recall the first time you met someone. And I remember crystal clearly the actual time I met John. He came from England. I was new to Victoria, and he was in the office in the Department of Agriculture, and I came into the same office, and we met for the first time. My first reaction was, I thought to myself, he looks a bit English. And it was in the 1970s, not 1970s, it was in 1970s. And 1970 wasn't exactly the politically correct times that we live in now. And I might have actually thought to myself, he looks like a bit of a pop. Then followed very quickly a collegial working relationship, very close friendship. And we spent our bachelor years with that relationship, followed by getting a dog, finding wives, buying a house, begetting children. And you can see how the degree of difficulty in life was exponentially increasing. Through all of that, I remember John as a man of great integrity. He was a gentleman, not in the common usage of a gentleman, but he was a gentleman. That was then, and here we are. I may have missed a step or two along the way, but if something can serve as an epitaph to John, it's a poem that I recall by John Carter. It's called Late Fragments. Did you get what you wanted out of this life? After all, I did. And what is it that you want? To call myself beloved. To be beloved on this earth.
Thank you, Robert. The family have asked me to invite anyone who would like to speak briefly about their remembrance of John to come up, and also to bear in mind that there will be a lot of time for remembrances down in the Huntley hotel later on. But yes, please.
John was a good friend of mine. He supported Luton Town football team. I supported Gutteridge. It was a bit of fun about that. But our trip to England was really good. At the time, I was waiting for a new hip, and John, of course, couldn't see very well. So I used to say to the staff at the airport, "Come on, my friend can't see and I can't walk, we have a wheelchair." But it was good fun. At the time, we were just getting over COVID. The Melbourne airport was in chaos. And when we got to Heathrow, that was in chaos as well. I think John had a good holiday catching up with his family. And I did too. I first met John and Marie, I don't know, it must have been 8 or 9 years ago now, when I was full-time house sitter. And I came and looked after their place while they were on holiday in Europe. And then I looked after the place a couple of times after that. And looked after the sheep and the chooks. And their little dog named Jip, wasn't it? Yeah. And that was good fun. He was a real good friend of mine. And I'll miss him.
My name is David Cole, I come from Oregon, and I've known John and Marie for over 50 years. I joined the pig industry branch of the Victorian Department of Agriculture in 1972. It was during that year that John took over the branch from Mike Trapman, who returned to England. John was a great leader and mentor to all his staff, and like others, I benefited greatly from that support. He helped and supported me with overseas travel. I got a chance to stay with his sister and her husband, John and Una, and the 2 boys, further education and training and career opportunities. He was always so easy to approach and very supportive. Nothing was too much trouble for him. I'll always be indebted to John for all the things he helped me with, and I couldn't have had a better manager and supervisor.
My name's John Rogerson. John Gutteridge was my first boss. And there's 3 things that stood out to me with John. The first thing was when I started in the Department of Ag, John set up my training program for the first 3 years. It was 15 months doing a research project, and the rest of the time was doing a whole range of different activities, which was part of my training. It was a 5-page document, and I was absolutely astounded and amazed by the amount of work John put into it. And it was fantastic. It set me up for the rest of my working career. And then some other things happened along the way. So John came in one day and said, "There's something I'd like you to do." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Well, I'd like you to be the secretary of the Australian Society of Animal Production in Victoria." I said, "Well, what do?" He said, "Just come to the meetings." I go to the meetings, have to take the minutes. The first thing he says is, "You've got to organise a conference." And I'm thinking, wow. Anyway, so that was good, we did all that. Then he came up to me a while later and said, "I've got a little job for you." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "I want you to be secretary of the Victorian Pork and Bacon Council." So these are the jobs that I collected along the way, because I was in head office working with John, and they are absolutely formative for me, and I'll always appreciate John for his support. One of the 2 issues with the pig people was we had morning tea with the poultry branch. And we'd go in, make a cup of tea. So I went in one day very early on in my time there, made a cup of tea, put 2 sugars in, and then up beside me walks John. And he says, "So what are you putting that stuff in your cup for?" He's referring to the sugar. I said, "Well, everyone in my family has sugar." He says, "It's not good for you, you need to stop it." And he said it really nicely. And I've never had sugar in the tea. The last thing John did for me is he had a back. So when I did my first lot of training, I had to produce a report. I had two supervisors down in SS Cameron Labs in Werribee, and so my supervisor signed off the report, and I presented it up to head office, and John comes to me one day and says, "Got a bit of a problem here." I said, "Well, what's that?" He said, "Well, someone's written in saying that your report's not good enough." And I said, "Who's that?" He said, "Well, that's Dr. Hector." And I said, "He's one of the supervisors. Like, he signed off this report." So I said to John, "So, John, what do I do?" And he says, "Leave it with me, I'll sort it out." So John sorted it out. He went and spoke to Dr. Hector, and they sorted it out. And now, it's not often that John fired up at work, but I'm pretty sure that he fired up on Dr. Hector, because I got cleared for that report. It's great having John as my boss. He is a wonderful boss, and so important for my formative life as I was coming out of university. So I'm really thankful for that.
Thank you, everyone. It is always lovely to hear how many people held this gentleman in high regard. I'd like to invite John's daughter-in-law, Deborah, to come and do a reading.
Thank you, everyone. Before I read, I just want to say thank you to John. I met him in '97 when I started dating Peter. By late '97, we were engaged. And John says, "I hope you're not going to be one of those girls that takes her own surname." I said, "No, sir." We're moving on to time. 12 years ago, I lost my dad to cancer. John held me in a firm hug and said, "I'm really sorry for your loss, Deb, but I'm here for you if you ever need me." And he was. I had the privilege of sitting with John in the last 7 days. His last clear words to me were, "Thank you for so much for everything you've done for me. You're a really nice guy." And regardless if he knew who I was at that moment, those would be his words, that he saw my heart and knew my intention. So, I was going to read a poem that's in your service booklet. I've changed my mind. This is called "Remember Me" by Anthony Dawson. Speak of me as you always have done. Remember the good times, laughter and fun. Share the happy memories we've made. Do not let them wither or fade. I'll be with you in the summer's sun, and when the winter chill has come, I'll be the voice that whispers in the breeze. I'm peaceful now, put your mind at ease. I've rested my eyes and gone to sleep. But memories we've shared are yours to keep. Sometimes our final days may be a test, but remember me when I was at my best. Although things may not be the same, do not be afraid to use my name. Let your sorrow last for just a while. Comfort each other and try to smile. I've lived a life filled with joy and fun. So live on now. Make me proud of what you'll become. I love you, John. Rest in peace.
Just as we welcome a child into our lives, there are times where we must say goodbye to those who leave us. It's time for us to say a formal farewell to John. Marie, family, I hope the reflections you've heard today will give you some comfort in the days ahead. Our bodies come from the stuff of the planet, molecules built into the pattern of our ancestry, nourished by the earth, warmed by the sun, filled with light and love, and always returning to those molecules at the end. Would you all please stand